All right, so you've been looking into government contract responsibility.
You have.
Yeah, particularly around the General
Mhm.
Services Administration,
Yeah.
the GSA.
Yep.
We're diving straight into that today.
Right. You want to get like a real handle
Huh?
on some big changes happening with how the federal government buys things
Quickly.
quickly.
Like, really get up to speed.
Yeah. And we've got a great resource,
Yeah.
an article from Goodwin on JD Supra titled Expanding Government Contract Responsibility of the
Wow.
General Services Administration.
All right, cool.
Lays out the crucial details.
So let's unpack this, because it sounds like the way the government shops is about to get a major overhaul.
Yeah.
Our goal here is to really understand what these changes are all about, what's driving them, and what the potential fallout could be.
Yep.
This should be especially relevant if you're tracking government efficiency and the whole federal contracting scene.
Right.
So where do we even begin with something this big?
Well, I think we should start with the headline, which is procurement consolidation.
Okay.
The engine driving this is President Trump's executive order issued back on March 20th, 2025, with the very straightforward title, Eliminating Waste and Taxpayer Dollars by Consolidating Procurement.
Okay.
So the name kind of tells you the main idea.
Which is, in essence,
To bring the federal government's purchasing of domestic common goods and services under one central authority, and that authority is the GSA.
So the idea is fewer agencies doing their own buying and more of it funneled through the GSA.
That's the basic idea.
That sounds like a pretty fundamental shift.
Yeah.
What kind of scale are we talking about here?
Big time. In
Yeah.
terms of the dollars involved.
Yeah, like how much money are we talking about?
It's massive. This article points out that this move is projected to roughly quadruple
Wow.
the GSA's annual procurement volume.
Okay.
We're talking about the GSA overseeing contracts totaling over $490 billion every year. So for you, this represents not just more potential contracts channeled through one point,
Right.
but also a significant opportunity to understand the GSA's evolving priorities and become a key player within their framework.
Mm-hmm.
It also raises questions about the agility of such a large, centralized system.
Yeah, almost $500 billion now under one agency's roof.
It's huge.
It really gives you a sense of the magnitude.
Yeah.
So is this just a plan on paper at this point, or are we already seeing these changes in action?
No, it sounds like it's already happening.
Oh, wow.
According to the article, the GSA is already piloting this initiative.
Yeah.
They've reportedly taken over procurement responsibilities for the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, and also for the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM.
Right.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The article mentions that OPM apparently laid off
Oh, wow.
its entire procurement department very recently.
The entire procurement department.
The entire procurement department.
That's a huge deal.
I know, right?
That really underscores the scale of this.
For sure.
Were there any details in the article about how that transition was managed?
I don't think so.
Or the impact on OPM's operations?
No. I think it was just like a side note.
Yeah.
But a pretty significant one.
Yeah, it's a pretty stark illustration of the immediate impact.
Definitely.
So the GSA is quickly becoming the primary purchasing arm for a growing number of federal entities.
Right.
You've mentioned common goods and services a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a term that could be open to a lot of interpretation.
It is.
How exactly is the executive order defining what falls into that category?
Well, it's not arbitrary. The executive order specifically refers to 10 procurement categories established by the Category Management Leadership Council,
Okay.
the CMLC.
The CMLC, tell me a bit more about what they do.
The CMLC is a federal body created to guide the government in buying goods and services more strategically, essentially acting as a unified purchasing entity.
Mm-hmm.
Their goal is to reduce redundancies, increase efficiency, and ultimately achieve better value and cost savings in government procurement.
Got it.
It's chaired by the Administrator of Federal Procurement Policy, and the voting members include representatives from major federal buying agencies.
Okay.
So you're thinking the Departments of Defense, Energy, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, Veterans Affairs, the GSA itself, and NASA.
Wow.
So it's a council with significant influence and represents a large chunk of federal spending.
Okay, so this isn't just a GSA initiative happening in a vacuum.
No.
This is informed by this broader council representing the big federal spenders.
Right. You can see the thinking there that past procurement practices might have been too fragmented and inefficient.
Right,
And they
right.
wanted to kind of like streamline things.
Make it all make sense.
Yeah.
Now, these 10 procurement categories that define common goods and services, what exactly are we talking about here?
This is where we really see the reach of this consolidation.
Okay.
The article breaks down these 10 categories, and it's quite comprehensive.
Okay.
First, we have facilities and construction,
Okay.
which includes everything from building materials and services to the purchase and leasing of facilities.
Right, so anything connected to the government's physical footprint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The second category is professional services.
Okay.
This is a broad one,
Yeah.
encompassing business administration, financial legal management and advisory services, marketing PR,
Mm-hmm.
research and development social services, and even technical engineering.
Wow. Okay, so that's a huge range of expertise now, potentially being procured centrally.
It is indeed.
So then we move on to information technology.
Yep.
Covering software, hardware, consulting, cybersecurity, outsourcing, and telecommunications.
Right.
Next up is medical,
Yep.
which includes pharmaceuticals, healthcare services, and medical equipment and supplies.
Uh-huh.
The fifth category is transportation and logistics,
Right.
dealing with fuels, logistics support non-combat vehicles, package delivery transportation equipment, and what they term transportation of things, basically the movement of goods and personnel.
That's it.
Yeah. So from complex IT systems to the nuts and bolts of moving supplies,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really diverse set of needs.
It is.
What are the remaining categories?
We then have industrial products and services,
Okay.
which includes things like fire and safety equipment hardware and tools, maintenance and repair materials, machinery, lubricants, and testing supplies.
Wow.
Seventh is travel,
Okay.
covering employee relocation lodging and passenger travel.
Okay.
Security and protection is the eighth category, including ammunition, protective gear, security animals, security services,
Mm-hmm.
security systems, and weapons.
Right.
Number 9 is human capital,
Okay.
which covers compensation benefits, employee relations, HR strategy and policy operations planning, and talent acquisition and development.
Wow.
And finally, the 10th category is office management,
Okay.
which includes furniture and general office products and services.
Looking at that list, the term common goods and services is clearly very expansive.
That's pretty broad.
It seems like the GSA is poised to handle a very significant portion of all federal government purchasing.
It does. The article emphasizes that this list essentially means the GSA will be responsible for nearly all acquisitions
Wow.
within these 10 areas across all federal agencies.
That's huge.
Yeah, it really highlights the sweeping nature of these changes.
So this executive order is out there, and
Yeah.
we have a much clearer picture of what common goods and services means.
Right.
What's the timeline for actually putting all of this into practice?
Right. It sounds like a monumental undertaking.
Yeah.
The executive order lays out some fairly aggressive deadlines.
Okay.
By April 19th, 2025,
Mm-hmm.
the GSA's acting administrator, Stephen Ahikian,
Okay.
is supposed to be designated as the executive agent for government-wide acquisition contracts, or GWACs,
Mm-hmm.
specifically for IT.
GWACs for IT, that represents a substantial amount of federal IT spending, doesn't it?
Huge.
Yeah.
And no later than May 19th, 2025. All federal agency heads are required to submit proposals detailing how the GSA will take over their affected procurement activities.
Wow. So agencies are already under a tight time frame
They are.
to figure out what they need to transition to the GSA.
Yeah.
Following that, by June 18th, 2025, the GSA's acting administrator has to present a comprehensive plan for consolidating all these procurement efforts to the OMB.
Right.
So that's a really compressed schedule.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to leave much room for delays or unforeseen issues.
Right.
Are there any mechanisms in place for potential adjustments or a phased approach?
There are. The executive order does acknowledge that a completely seamless transition
Okay.
might not be immediately achievable.
Okay.
It includes a provision allowing the GSA's acting administrator,
Okay.
in consultation with the director of OMB, to defer or even decline
Okay.
the executive agent designation for those IT GWACs if it's deemed necessary to ensure uninterrupted service delivery,
Right.
or if further analysis is required to determine whether using GWCs for IT will genuinely lead to a reduction in contract duplication and inefficiencies.
Right. So there's a bit of a safety net,
Yeah,
at least on the IT side of things.
at least for now.
Okay. A degree of flexibility built in, especially for the significant area of IT procurement.
That's right.
Okay.
And the article also mentions that the OMB was mandated to issue a memorandum to all agencies by April 3rd, 2025.
Okay.
specifically to get the ball rolling on this GWIC for IT requirement.
All right, so it seems like they're aiming for a swift start in that sector.
It does.
It sounds like a lot of information is being rolled out in a very short time frame.
It is.
Is there a central hub where people can stay informed about these developments?
There is. The GSA has actually established a dedicated website specifically for their procurement consolidation efforts.
Oh, fantastic.
The article mentions that they are actively updating it with new information as it becomes available.
Okay, great.
So that's definitely a key resource for anyone seeking the latest updates.
All right, and is there anything else?
Additionally, the GSA's acting administrator is also maintaining a blog
Oh, wow.
on the official agency website,
Okay.
providing ongoing updates and insights into the consolidation process as it unfolds.
That's really valuable information for anyone looking to track this closely.
It is.
Now, let's shift our focus to how all of this is likely to impact the businesses that actually sell goods and services to the federal government,
Right.
the federal contractors.
Yeah, this seems like it could have some pretty significant ramifications for them.
Yeah, this seems like a big deal for those folks.
Absolutely. This shift has the potential to fundamentally alter the way contractors interact with the government.
Okay.
The article references a White House fact sheet
Yeah.
that was released alongside the executive order,
Uh,
and it provides some specific examples of the types of contracts they're targeting for consolidation.
okay.
These include things like identity protection software,
Right.
IT hardware and licenses, office productivity tools, and even everyday workplace appliances.
Okay, so even for what might seem like routine purchases,
Right.
procurement process could be changing.
Potentially.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
even for fairly standard items,
Mm-hmm.
the way contractors have historically engaged with different agencies
Mm-hmm.
might be changing significantly.
That's right. While contractors have often had the option to sell these kinds of goods and services through existing GSA schedules,
Yeah.
many agencies have preferred to contract directly with vendors to address their specific needs.
Right.
But if this direct contracting ability is curtailed
Mm-hmm.
and procurement is centralized within the GSA,
Right.
contractors could start to see longer overall procurement timelines.
So a more centralized system,
Yeah,
particularly if the GSA initially has fewer procurement professionals
right.
handling a substantially increased workload,
Right. It makes sense.
could certainly create bottlenecks.
Yeah, you would think so.
What about contracts that are already in place?
Yeah.
Are those likely to be affected by this consolidation?
That's a really critical question.
Yeah.
The article raises the distinct possibility that contractors with active contracts might see those contracts transferred from the original agency that awarded them
Okay.
to the GSA for administrative purposes.
Okay, so essentially shifting the management of those contracts.
Right. This could include the exercise of options and the implementation of modifications.
That sounds like it could potentially create some significant administrative burdens for contractors.
It certainly could.
Yeah.
It would necessitate building new relationships with procurement professionals at the GSA, and it could also lead to a greater separation between the contractor and the actual federal end user,
Right.
the individuals within the agency who are ultimately receiving and using the goods or services.
Yeah.
So that direct line of communication and the nuanced understanding of specific agency requirements
Yeah.
could potentially be weakened.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the potential for longer timelines
Mm-hmm.
and a more indirect relationship with the client agency.
Right.
What other kinds of impacts might federal contractors need to brace for?
Well, the consolidation could also result in an overall reduction
Okay.
in the total number of government contracts awarded,
Okay.
although the value of the remaining contracts might be higher.
Okay. So fewer contracts,
Yeah.
but bigger contracts.
Right. The underlying idea is that by leveraging the GSA to buy in bulk,
Okay.
the government might be able to negotiate more favorable pricing,
Mhm.
but this could have an unintended consequence of making it more challenging
Right.
for small businesses to effectively compete
Okay.
for these larger consolidated opportunities.
Yeah.
They might lack the necessary scale or resources
Mhm.
to successfully bid on and fulfill these more substantial contracts.
That's a serious concern, especially when considering the government's long-standing commitment to supporting small businesses in federal contracting.
Yeah.
Has the Small Business Administration offered any perspective on this development?
So the article notes that at the time of its publication, the U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA,
Okay.
had not yet issued any specific guidance concerning this particular executive order or other related initiatives that could impact small business contracting.
Okay.
However, the author suggests that such guidance is likely to be forthcoming, given the potential ramifications.
Right.
Interestingly, the article also points out that the SBA recently revised its small, disadvantaged business contracting goals
Okay.
for the federal government downwards
Really?
from the levels established under the Biden administration.
Interesting.
So they suggest that this downward revision could potentially be aligned
Okay.
with the anticipated outcomes of this broader procurement consolidation effort.
That's a subtle but potentially very telling observation.
It is.
It hints that the SBA might be anticipating a shift
Mm-hmm.
in the landscape of contracting opportunities
Right.
for small businesses.
Yeah.
So for contractors who are currently operating in the federal space,
All right.
what are the key practical takeaways they should be focusing on right now?
Well, the article offers some very practical advice.
Okay.
Federal prime contractors and subcontractors should be prepared for the possibility of disruptions to their existing contracts.
Oh.
As the GSA and other federal agencies work to implement this consolidation directive.
Right.
This could manifest as stop work orders or even contract terminations in some cases.
That sounds like it could create significant instability for contractors.
It could.
What's the recommended course of action
Yeah.
if they encounter such disruptions?
The crucial advice is to ensure they obtain clear and explicit written direction
Okay.
from their contracting officer
Wow.
if any such disruptions occur.
Okay.
And they should also make sure to formally request this information in writing and in accordance with the specific terms
Got it.
and relevant regulations governing their contracts.
So meticulously document everything.
Document everything
Yeah.
and fully understand their rights and obligations under the existing contract.
And looking ahead, what proactive steps should contractors be taking to prepare themselves for this evolving environment?
Well, given that this consolidation effort could lead to a smaller overall pool of contract opportunities,
Right.
it's absolutely essential for contractors to stay well informed
Okay.
about how these changes are unfolding.
Okay.
They need to take proactive steps to ensure they will remain eligible and competitive
Okay.
for the opportunities that do emerge.
Right.
This might involve reevaluating their business development strategies and identifying new ways to differentiate themselves in the marketplace.
And beyond just the process of bidding on contracts,
Right.
are there other compliance-related aspects that contractors should be paying close attention to?
Absolutely, because the GSA is assuming this significantly expanded role in federal procurement.
Mm-hmm.
It's highly probable that there will be changes to the relevant regulations and oversight mechanisms.
Okay.
Federal contractors should be prepared for potential additional shifts in their compliance obligations. Okay.
As the GSA takes on these new responsibilities, the article specifically suggests that this executive order will likely lead to the development of new GSA-specific procurement regulations.
Okay.
And these new rules could impose different requirements on both bidders
Okay.
and those who are awarded contracts.
Okay, so staying current with these evolving regulatory changes will be absolutely critical.
Absolutely.
So a lot for anyone involved in federal contracting to keep a close eye on.
It is a lot.
To recap, we're witnessing a major shift in how the federal government procures common goods and services,
Yeah.
with the GSA taking on a much larger and more central role,
Uh-huh.
all driven by this recent executive order.
That's the core of it. A significant consolidation driven by the stated objectives of eliminating waste and achieving greater taxpayer savings.
Right.
This impacts a very wide spectrum of goods and services as defined by those 10 CMLC procurement categories.
Right, and while the underlying goal is enhanced efficiency.
This fundamental shift has the potential to bring about some considerable changes in the way the government conducts its purchasing.
Uh-huh.
And by extension, the way contractors conduct their business with the government.
Exactly. Potential for longer procurement timelines.
Right.
Possible shifts in how contracts are administered.
Hmm.
The likelihood of fewer but larger contract opportunities.
Okay.
And the expectation of new regulatory requirements are all important factors that contractors need to consider as this evolves.
Definitely a rapidly changing landscape.
It is.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive into a significant development.
Yeah, it's been great.
Considering this major shift in federal procurement, what innovative strategies might contractors need to adopt to thrive in this evolving landscape?
That's a great question.
And what new oversight challenges might arise for the GSA as it takes on this expanded role?
Another great question.
That's certainly something for everyone to consider as these changes continue to unfold.
Absolutely.
Thanks for breaking it all down for us.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
You got it.